Welcome to HDTV. You're now rocking with your boy. Everybody is asking the big question. Whose era is this? Now, people have said it's just got to be LeBron's era, the 2010s, Is it really his era? Is it really his era? Because he's lost more than he's won. Listen, y'all know how I feel about this era. To me, this era is just full of role players. You have a bunch of overglorified role players and guys who aren't really takeover guys like the era we came from. The last era of the takeover guy was Kobe's era, the 2000s, and Tim Duncan. Those guys took the game over when it was time to take the game over. Now, the best player of this era, and I've said it, is the most impactful player of this era, has been Steph Curry. He's been the most impactful. He's he's always done everything the right way coming out of Davidson. Nobody ever really gave Steph a chance. I was right. I was probably the only one during the time to say Steph Curry is going to be that guy one of these days. I didn't know he was going to be this great. But the thing is that people now, if you want to talk about this decade and onward, yes, I believe Steph Curry is the best, like has the most impact. But the best player of the decade is Kawhi Leonard. Are you kidding me? Kawhi Leonard, his dominance, but because of his injury history, it's kind of hard for us to put him in that stature. But the player you would have to go with mostly is Steph Curry because Steph Curry has had to me probably the best team of the decade. If you want to say that, he's had the best team of the decade, but Kawhi Leonard is the best player of the decade. Like both sides of the ball, like is amazing defensively, offensively, big shots down the stretch to take on the best player and lock them down. His defense against Kevin Durant on the way to the finals that year to beat Miami was extraordinary. And if not for a Zaza Pachulia foot there and him getting hurt, Kawhi probably would have had another chip under his belt because they were blowing Golden State out in that game one with the KD, Steph, Clay, and Draymond. So if you want to say the most impactful player, the guy who changed the game, you would say Steph Curry. But would I say LeBron James? LeBron James is probably the fifth best player of this era. I would go Kawhi, KD, Steph. Nobody talks about Klay Thompson. I think Klay Thompson is up there. I think Klay Thompson should have an argument because he's hit the most big shots of any of those guys. Personally, if you want me to be honest, like, let's just be honest with it. But if you give it to Steph Curry, I won't have an argument. Steph has been the most impactful player. Like I said, he's the most impactful player. That doesn't mean you're the best player. Michael Jordan, I always argue with people, was the most impactful player of the 90s, but I never would give him the best player. I always gave it to Hakeem. Hakeem just didn't get the respect because he was on Houston from a skill standpoint. But Michael proved that he was the better player longevity because he came back and got 3 championships. So we would say Mike is the best in the 90s, and then we would go Hakeem Olajuwon. Some would argue Penny Hardaway, but Penny got hurt too soon. But of this past decade, you have the most impactful, which to me is Steph. But if I had to do an order of the best player, I would go Kawhi, Kevin Durant. That would be one or two. Then I would go Steph, or Clay, and then I wouldn't even give it to LeBron. I think James Harden had a better decade than LeBron. Like if we're talking about it. People are going to say, well, LeBron won rings. I don't count them rings. They gave him those rings. LeBron James really wasn't the focal point on those teams. When he was in Miami, Chris Bosh was the reason they won. They got the chip, him and Ray Allen. In that supporting cast. When he went to Cleveland, Kyrie got him the ring. And then when he was in LA in that bubble, I don't count that but these dumb LeBron fans count it. But Anthony Davis and Rondo basically took that game over, that whole playoff run. But you could put Harden at 5 or Westbrook. You could put them at the number 5 position. LeBron, you could put at number 5 most likely, but LeBron wasn't the better player in the 2010s. That's the decade I'm going off of. I'm not going off of the 2020s. We haven't really seen yet who's dominated this era yet. We still gotta wait. But yeah, I would go Kawhi, KD, Steph, Clay, and probably LeBron. LeBron would probably be number 5. That's who I would have at number 5 for the best in the era of the decade. But Kawhi Leonard's the best player of the decade. Then I got Kevin Durant. Then I got Steph Curry. I mean, this era to me is full of role players. Kawhi to me is probably the only guy I could see as a number 1. Like a true number 1 player that takes the game over at the end, who does what he's supposed to do, is Kawhi Leonard. Everybody else, in my opinion, I just don't see it. I don't see it. Now, Giannis, this decade coming up, I'm starting to still see a bunch of number 2s. To me, this past decade, 2010s and on, is the era of the role player. I mean, that's what it is. I put Kawhi number 1 because he was the best player, like hands down. And then if you go to Kevin Durant, yeah, Kevin Durant won with Golden State, but as far as his play wise, Kevin Durant was the best player like for a decade, like outside of, if I had to choose, because he was more healthier than Kawhi. I'm just going off of if everybody's healthy. But I would put either KD number 1 or I would put Kawhi number 1 of the decade. Steph would be number 3. Then I would go with Clay, and then I would go with either LeBron, Westbrook, or Harden. Those 3 are to me all at number 5. That would be number 5. It's a 3-way tie with number 5. Thank you for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, share this. Hit the notification bell to select all to receive upcoming notifications. And if y'all love what y'all hear, y'all can go to my Cash App. Hit that link in the description box. That'll take you there. You guys can donate whatever your heart's desire. You can also super chat while we're live or videos premiering. And if you guys want to do a super thanks, which is, if you just come back to watch the video, you can super thanks. So thank you for listening. We out. Deezy.